Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Design Meetup 2.0 powered by IDF Kerala and co-sponsored by Experian Technologies. We strive to give users the best experience to complete a task, and for that reason we have our topic today as app theming in JS framework. So I would ask a guest to drop in a name and what you do. If you're an aspiring front-end developer, UX designer, UI developer, or a working professional or a student, please ping in the chat window your name and what you do. It's good to know we have a good number of UI developers and designers on board. All right. Okay, so moving forward, coming to our speaker, Joel Philip is a self-taught front-end developer who likes to experiment with web and front technologies and to make highly interactive web apps. He contributes to technical blogs and webinars. He's passionate about trying micro interaction that help the websites become more intuitive and user-friendly. And he's one of our good friends in the office who is always welcoming us to talk about new apps, gadgets, and electronics that are available in the market. So he's extremely known about all sort of newcomings in the web market as well. He's extremely well read, and we call him the walking encyclopedia. So for the better experience, we have muted all the audience mic during the presentation time. Please raise your queries in the comment section. Although we have an exclusive Q&A session right after the webinar, where the audience can interact and discuss on the same topic. For those who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And all right, without taking much more time, and handing over the mic to Joel. Joel, have a great session.
Thank you, Anirudh, and thank you everyone for having me here. And I'm excited to be part of this webinar hosted by IDF and co-sponsored by Experian. I'm sure many of you, during some part of your life, you have interacted with web pages and you're curious to know how they work and what makes them look so good. So today we'll be going through a number of topics where we will get to know what builds up websites, and then we will gradually progress towards what makes them look good, and then finally we'll just touch upon the topic at hand, app theming in JavaScript frameworks. And as many of you know, these days JavaScript frameworks are becoming more and more popular, and a lot of people do want to learn how they work and they want to become good at it so that they have an ace, and they also prefer to know it for the sake of getting good jobs, which is obviously means that we have a good portfolio and we need to improve our skills within these frameworks. And the advantages that are brought forth by these frameworks are so huge that almost every company now wants to switch over from their old websites to a progressive web app. So coming over to the topic at hand, how do we build websites to make them support themes, and how do we go through the process of linking up the styles to the web pages? And I would want all of you to feel free to raise your questions in the chat box, and also feel free to ask your doubts there, although we'll have a dedicated time for your questions. So moving forward, I'll be covering a few basics because I know not every one of you is a front-end developer, and I want to also make the others who do not have a background feel comfortable with this. And of course, if you feel that we need to come again with another webinar, do post in the chat box. So the content that goes in between the opening tag and the closing tag is the content that appears within the web pages, and it can be styled to appear in different formats. Moving on, I would like to show you the basic structure that makes up every every web page. The basic tag, which is the doc type tag at the very top, is a tag which indicates to the browser that this page is a HTML5 page, and it is followed by the HTML tag with the lang attribute. Now the lang attribute changes its value as the language supported by the web page changes, or the language used within the web page changes. Then we have the head tag, which holds the meta tags and the title tag. The title tag, as you can see, is the one that is shown up at the tab of the browser when you use it, and we specify all of the details and the settings regarding the viewport within the meta tags. And the body tag, which comes next, holds all of the content within the web page, the content which we usually style and which is rendered on every user screen. So what does what makes this HTML page look good, and how does it get its appearance? This is where cascading style sheets come in. They enable you to customize HTML tags to create a rich user interface. And there are many ways in which you can use styles within HTML. You can reference it in different places. You can reference it in line. The style could be placed within a style tag, or at the basic level, you can also place it in a dedicated style sheet, which is referenced by the HTML. So I'll just give you an example of how that works out. As you can see on the screen, there is this structure is similar to the one which we saw earlier, and the difference is that now we have the styles also referenced. At the most basic level, we can see that the style background color red is referenced in line within the span tag. You could also style the span tag within the style tag inside the head, and we could also specify the styles within a styles.css file, which is an external style sheet, and then refer it within this HTML document using the link tag. So these are the three main ways by which you reference it, and this stays the same for almost every framework out there, even though all of them process style sheets in different ways. Some frameworks load style sheets based on the module that is currently loaded, like Angular, and there are other frameworks which perform different operations to optimize the user experience. But all of them literally at the end of the day end up importing or linking up style sheets using the link tag. So coming up to what makes the page look good. Cascading style sheets hold the CSS code, which is shown here. As you can see from the first screenshot, there is a parent selector, and then you can nest selectors within the parent selector. So suppose you have a tree of div tags. There's one div tag within the other, and there's another within those two, and it goes on till the nth child. And you can style each and every one of them by lining up the selectors in this manner, and then using the property within the block with the corresponding property values. And a typical scenario is shown just below. You can see that the color is applied for different states, and this sort of code, you might think, well, is it easy to maintain, or what happens if the web page becomes if the web application becomes too complex to maintain and there are a lot of pages with a lot of classes. So there is a solution. And nowadays, what we use is called preprocessors. So what is a preprocessor? A preprocessor is basically a program that lets you generate CSS from the preprocessor's unique syntax. And so you might ask, what is the advantage of the preprocessor's unique syntax? The syntax is designed in such a way that it overcomes all of the hard parts, the difficult parts, converts it into a syntax which makes writing style easier. And there are many preprocessors now in existence, and there are some which are really famous. We will go through some of them. Now we'll just take a look at where the preprocessor fits inside the whole picture. So as I mentioned to you earlier, and as you can see from the screenshot, we have a link tag which references styles.css file, and this styles.css file is the one which is generated by the preprocessor. So as you can see, there are three names within the map: SASS, stylus, and less. And you can see the corresponding files, the file with the file extensions. These are just three preprocessors, which allow you to convert style code into pure CSS3. And the output of the preprocessor, the .css file, is linked within the index.html or the HTML document. Now this pattern is followed across almost all JavaScript frameworks these days, and all of these preprocessors can be installed into the framework via package managers such as npm or yarn. Now we'll take a look at what the preprocessor has to offer us. So when I say SASS, or syntactically awesome style sheets, this is it refers to a preprocessor which supports two syntaxes. One is commonly referred to as the SCSS, and the other one is referred to as SASS. There is not much of a difference between these two. SCSS requires you to use the curly brackets, while the SASS does not require you to use that. You can write the styles with just indentation. And the advantage of SCSS are those which make CSS more intuitive. We'll come to that shortly. But for this presentation, we'll stick to SASS, although the other preprocessors are also unique in their own way. I would encourage you to go check them out as well. So what are the other preprocessors that people use? As I had mentioned earlier, stylus is one of them. Less. PostCSS is a hybrid. It is very unique in its own way, and it does not have much parallels with the others, but it's still a very popular option. Coming back to SASS or SASS, so what are the features that make it very interesting? It has got full CSS3 compatibility. So compatibility means every file which is earlier a .css file, you can convert it into a .scss file, and the preprocessor will still be able to process it. And it has various features such as nesting, variables, and mixins, and many useful functions for manipulating colors and other values. And finally, it's an open sourced preprocessor, so the source code is available. We'll shortly see the advantages of SASS, but before going further, I would like to make one feature of SASS very prominent: the SASS variable. And the SASS variable is capable of not just holding values such as hex codes. It can hold other values as well. But for this presentation, I would like to stick with the use of hex codes since this presentation is all about theming, and we'll get into how they are used shortly. And before going deeper, I would also like to introduce another feature in CSS3, which is called CSS Variables. Now, the usefulness of this feature is uh, it is the one that makes theming possible. You might ask, like, in if theming wasn't possible before CSS Variables? Yes, it was, but then CSS Variables changed the scope, changed the game to such a level that it's completely different from what it was before, and we'll explore the possibilities. So, what are CSS variables? It's called a custom property, and it's a variable to which you can assign a CSS value. The advantages of CSS variable is that you can reuse it throughout the app. In earlier scenarios, developers used to go go around repeating their hex codes and similar values. So for every class that made use of a white background, they had to keep repeating the hex code. But this situation is no longer required. You can define a CSS variable within a global scope. So what do you mean by a scope? You might ask me, right? So a scope is basically the extent to which a variable can be accessed within a given web page. So how can you divide the scope of a variable? How can you make sure that the variable is accessible throughout the web page? Well, I'll introduce you to another selector. It's called the root selector. If you define CSS variables within the root selector, they will be accessible throughout the web page. And as you can see on the screen, there are a few variables defined, and we have assigned a few hex code values to them. And these variables are the CSS variables. As you can see, there are two hyphens at the beginning, and that is the standard which we follow when we are naming CSS variables. And as you can see in the screenshot, the root selector, which I had mentioned earlier, this selector makes the variable which we have declared inside it, the variable called black. It becomes accessible throughout the web page, and this variable can be modified within another scope to make it have a different value for a particular set of tags. So we'll explore the methods for doing that. So how do we reference a CSS variable? How do we actually use it? How can we assign the value inside the CSS variable to a property? So to reference it, we will call it with this syntax var, and within the parentheses we'll call the variable name, and that makes it very simple to use. Now I would like to show you how it is used in with an example. This is a typical case where you have a scenario where we have a theme applied on top of the highest level tag, and as you can see that we have a class applied to the HTML tag over here, the white light, and we have the class definition on the right side. So within this class definition, as you can see, for the body tag we define two variables, the background and the color, with corresponding values, and these variables are used within the root class to assign values to the background and color properties. So how does this theming work? Well, let me show you another scenario with a similar code. Now we have the class name changed to theme black, and theme black has a different class definition. Within the body tag, we have the background changed to hold the value black and color changed to the value white. And the definition within the root class remains the same because we want to compare two scenarios. And as you can see, the values within the variables have been swapped. So this is the most basic scenario where theming is applied. This scenario can extend to a different level when you have different buttons and fields, and you need to have a whole set of colors for all of those elements, and you modify them within separate classes, and these classes are switched at the highest tag, the HTML tag, and when one class is switched, the appearance of the whole screen changes. So I would like to just give you a little demo before we conclude. Hope you can see my browser. I will show you how we implement the class over here. As you can see in this tag, I have added the dark theme mod class, and the definition of the class is also shown here. And we have assigned the black color to the page bg variable and the white color to the page text variable. Now, if I change this class name to white, the scenario changes, and you might ask, how did the change happen? So our reference, our modification is on this div. As you can see, I have referenced the page bg variable within the app l content class, and I have also assigned another color for the h1 tag within that class, white theme mod. Now these values will be switched when I go back to the dark theme mod class. As you can see, the value of the color assigned to the h1 tag has changed, and the value of the color assigned to the app l content class has also changed. The background color has also changed. So this is a typical scenario, and this scenario can be extended with custom styling for many different elements which are added within this web page. Now, I would like to just go through what we have covered today. We went through the basics of markup, how HTML5 can be used to structure the web page, and how CSS3 helps us to make the page look good, and where do preprocessors help us in coding with CSS3, how it makes coding faster. We also had a look at SASS variables, and SASS variables can be used to do theming, although they are not as flexible as CSS variables. Do comment on the chat box if you would like me to come back to you with another session on how we can do it with SASS variables. But I think CSS variables will benefit you the most. And finally, we had a look at how CSS variables could be implemented for theming in our application. And what do you feel? Feel free to comment on the possibilities with regards to CSS variables, how they can be modified to enable theming which is non-standard, and how they can be used to alter theming dynamically. So I I will uh, I would like to receive all of those inputs from you, and I would like to conclude by saying that this is an area where you could keep on digging and exploring options to come up with a solution that makes your web application stand out from the others and get a place of its own. So thank you all.
Thank you, Joel. That was an interesting session. And on app theming and JS framework, I think we had a better insight of how coding in CSS3 is done and SAS variables too. So I think it's time. We can now have a interactive session. Please do raise your comments, your questions regarding the same.
Hello, Joel.
Yes,
Yeah, this is Raji.
yes, Raji.
Okay, that was really a good session on theming with JS framework, and I would like to ask a question on that. Okay,
Yeah, sure.
uh, is app theming possible for JS frameworks that are built for only mobile? For example, is it possible to apply theming on React Native applications?
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's possible. Uh, we have a lot of frameworks these days. Uh, if you are referring to the most commonly used frameworks, uh, I have worked with some of those frameworks. I have not worked with all of the latest ones. And as far as I can tell you that most of these frameworks use a, a uh, style library, which is quite similar to the one, quite similar to CSS3. And if you take a look at some of these styling libraries that they support, they all support the grid feature of CSS3. Some of them support uh, the flexbox feature, and regarding theming, most of these frameworks, especially the newer ones like the React Native, they support something called CSS in JS, which is a little different from the typical CSS that we use within web pages. These frameworks treat CSS as objects where you give the styles within objects and they are modified. They can be modified within the JS code, and they have their own unique way of implementing themes specifically for install them from the package managers. So yes, technically theming is possible in the latest mobile frameworks also. Yeah.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Philip. It was great session, Philip. Thanks for organizing this for the other team as well. I have a question. I have a couple of questions actually. So one question is about as a front-end developer, as you see nowadays, there are a lot of tools, plugins within the applications. Like if you take, for example, Adobe XD, because as I'm come from a UI UX background, so I try to see a lot of my prototypes should be easily convertible within the plugins where I can simply export. Rather, I look forward for any front-end developer who can develop it. So what is your comment on that? And what do you see as a future as a front-end developer or any other developers? Does this tools plugins will affect their future? I wanted your comments on this. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're referring to a specific tool that you are using for exporting your assets, or what? Or was it a general question?
It's a general question. Like you see nowadays, the many companies who coming forward for the creating. If you've done a prototype, it's easily I can they can just put some plugin or any add-on. Maybe depends on any platform tool softwares nowadays. They're coming up with different advantages where you can if you've done any prototype or wireframe, I can easily export those CSS, some the web pages like a basic HTMLs kind of thing. So what is your
Yes.
comment on that tools, and what is the future about for the future developers basis on this kind of tools will affect their future, or how do you think that?
Actually, as far as I can see, uh, all of these tools which come up with prototypes, they have their own inbuilt uh, engines which allow the code engines which allow conversion of the style into CSS. So if you're asking me whether that will affect how the way in which you know we front-end developers will work, I really don't see any way in which that will affect our work, because in the work that we are engaged in as front-end developers, there is a lot more of intuitive uh, input that we need to give in while creating the structure, and all of that work is done with a lot of experience that we have regarding how the page needs to be structured to enable backwards compatibility, and in case of changes to the structure, how we can code it in such a way that the change will not affect the rest of the screen adversely, and in such a way that the change can be delivered to the client within the shortest time. So all of those factors cannot be taken into consideration by these tools at the moment. And if you're asking me if an AI can do it, I'm not really sure, but it may be able to do it uh, somewhere in the distant future. Yeah, I'm not even sure of how much time it will take for computers to reach that level. So yeah, for now, this kind of a job is actually quite safe. I feel that it's got a good prospect, and the industry needs really good developers. I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, thanks Philip, thanks for that.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kiran. Okay, so feel free to ask more
Uh,
questions. Yeah.
Joel, this is Sammu.
yeah. Hi, Amu.
I have a question. Why we use hyphen for declaring variables? We are using dollar in web, right? Is there any specialty in JS framework in hyphen?
Actually, the two hyphens that are used before the variable name is a matter of conventional coding. So at one point in my presentation, I had mentioned that uh, we could also use SASS variables. And as you pointed out rightly, SASS variables use a dollar symbol at the beginning. And that is also the way in which the preprocessor, the SASS compiler, that's the only way in which the SASS compiler will accept those variables. If you try giving any other symbol at the beginning, it will come up with an error. So with regards to uh, CSS variables, uh, if I'm clear, your question was that why do we need to have uh, the hyphen on CSS variables? And
Yes.
if the hyphen is there, I mean, your question is that if we at any point, if we remove the hyphen, will it affect the way in which the page is rendered, right?
Yes.
I think that's your question, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'll just give you a demo on that. I hope you can see my screen. I hope you can see my browser. So
Yes.
this is just the example that I showed to you earlier. We have the same class over here, the dark theme mod, and we have the variables declared over here. And what I just did now is that I just changed the variable name by removing one of the hyphens. Okay, and you can
Okay.
see that it's got a strike through over that, right? And
Yes.
as you can see, as you can see from this this class, it is still referencing the variable over here, but the difference is that it has lost its color. So as you can see, the strike through indicates that there is an error in the declaration of the variable. So if I put put back the hyphen over here, the color comes back. So unfortunately, you will have to live with the hyphen. That is the way in which browsers accept CSS variables. I hope I've answered your
Okay.
question.
What is the role in var keyword in that variable? Var keyword we using that?
Yeah, yeah. So that is the part of the property that indicates to the compiler within the browser that the value coming into the property is from a variable. So if you remove the var from there, the problem is that it will not be assigned. If you just
Okay.
give a hyphen value, I'll just show it to you again on the browser. As you can see, if you just give it a hyphen value, it won't be accepted. So the compiler is created in such a way that it accepts the variable within the var. I hope
So
I've
var is
answered your
assigned the
question.
value to the variable, right?
Yeah, var is actually an inbuilt kind of a declaration, a kind of a function that takes in the variable name which has a hyphen at the as prefix. So yes, that is a requirement of the web standard defined within CSS3.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, hi Joel, Sharath here.
Hi Sharad. Yeah.
Okay, so we have variables in CSS and SAS as well. So in which scenarios using a serious CSS variable is better?
Thank you, Sharad. That's a very good question. So I was expecting that question to come at one point or the other. Yes, this was a question which came to me also during one of my projects, and that is what made me go into how CSS variables can be, modified to, help us to develop pages very quickly. So CSS variables are different from SASS variables in the sense that, as you can see, as I had showed to you earlier in the browser, you can actually see a CSS variable within the inspect window of your browser. So the CSS variables that I had declared within my files, I can actually see where it is referenced. But in the case of SASS variables, the same is not possible. As you know, SASS variables are uh, compiled, are taken in by the preprocessor, and the values within the variables are interpolated within the classes, and at the end, the output CSS from the preprocessor holds the classes with the values as such. They do not have any variables in the output CSS. So I'll just demonstrate that to you with an example. I'm applying a new class over here with I've removed the old class and I'm applying it like this. So as you can see, after I have applied the class, there is no change in the screen, and it's because this class was declared with SCSS variables or SAS. And as you can see, the H1 tag and the parent tag, both of them have the hex code values within them. They no longer have the CSS variables. So why is that so? And why is that different from the other scenario? As you can see, this is the typical scenario where you use two SCSS variables and then you reference the SCSS variables within the child tags. So coming to the question which was raised by Sharath, what is the difference? What is the main difference between SASS variables and CSS variables? So I'll just show you a scenario. Okay. So now you can see that I have two classes over here, the white theme class and the dark theme class. And these two classes are having variables inside them. But if you have observed, the variables used over here are not same as the variables used over here. So you might ask me, hey, why can't you use the same two variables within both the classes? Well, unfortunately, I'll show you how it works out. If you just copy these two variables from here, and I'll just comment this out. And I'll just use those two variables over here, and I'll try declaring new values. I'll just change the text value to white and the BG color to black, right? So what you may have observed right now is that it has got new values over here, and these new values, okay, sorry, there's a little error over here. Yeah, I will just use these variables here as well so that the compilation is happening correctly. So these variables, since they do not have a scope, since they are cannot be referenced within a scope, they will take the latest value which is assigned to them. So even if we assign separate values over here, and then we apply unique values over here, the values applied over here will be reflected within the variables that are used over here as well. So we cannot separate them into two different scopes. Whereas in case of CSS variables, as you can see over here, we can separate them into two classes and then separately define them to have unique values in their respective scope. And therefore, the value defined here will not affect this class, and the values defined here will not affect this class. So you can scope them within the classes. I hope that has answered your question, Sharad.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Sharad. Thank you, Sharad. Quick announcement. So we have a link to a new form where we could add your feedbacks about our session, the session that we had. You could add your thoughts and the next sessions that you would like to have in our upcoming sessions. Please do fill out the form that we have attached in the chat window. And back to Sneha, you were asking something.
Yeah. Hi, Joel. Sneha here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Sneha.
Hi. I have one question for you. Is dynamic theming possible for web apps?
Yes. So as I had mentioned earlier, we can use CSS variables to scope them within separate classes. But I'll also mention one more interesting feature in JavaScript, by which you can actually modify the values within CSS variables during runtime. So you might ask me how that will help in dynamic theming. Yes, you can literally use a color picker within your application, pick the color, and then make that color reflect throughout your web application. That is the end result of dynamic theming. So yes, it is possible within JS frameworks. And if anyone in this room, if you have any other ideas with regards to dynamic theming, do chime in or contribute to the chat box. I am really interested. Any more questions?
Joel?
Yeah.
Myself, Anirudh. So
Hello?
Can
Yeah.
you hear me? Okay. So, given the choice,
I can hear you. Yeah, your voice was breaking. Yeah, now I can hear you.
So given our choice between SASS variables and CSS variables, which one would you prefer for app theming?
I would definitely stick to CSS variables. Although earlier SASS variables were used, the limitations of those variables with regard to the scope and how you can modify them. Uh, they are um, they are far less flexible. SAS variables are far less flexible compared to SCSS variables, and so any developer would prefer CSS variables for theming.
Okay,
I hope
great.
that answers your question.
Yes, yes, that was what I asked. Great. Yeah, okay. So any more questions from the audience? Okay. Okay, so I would like to thank each and everyone who have taken their valuable time from a busy day to attend the webinar. And so special thanks to Vandana, Raji, Kiran, Ammu, Sharat, and Sneha for your questions and making it an interactive session. Thank you one and all for your time. And we have we are available on social media like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at IDF Kerala. You can also write to us at idfkerala@hotmail.com. We have added exclusive IDF community in Interaction Design Foundation website. Hope we'll all meet you in the next session, which we would be announcing it soon. And stay safe and stay tuned. Thank you so much.